Picture this, it is 2017, you just worked your butt off for half a year to try and save up enough money to buy a brand new console. You get the Nintendo Switch and Breath of the Wild along with it, and you fall completely and totally in love with the series. Now, that person was me in 2017, and you can hear a little bit more about that story in my previous video talking about this whole thing, but I love Zelda. I absolutely love Zelda. I played Skyward Sword HD, I played Wind Waker HD on the Wii U, I played Link's Awakening, I played Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, and the games I have not been able to play yet are Twilight Princess, Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask, and eventually I will get to those. I just don't want to pay for the expansion pass right now, but eventually I will get to that, and I am so excited about what the future of Zelda could possibly even hold, but yet, at the exact same time, I wonder what they're going to do. And I am a little bit worried because things have been divisive in the Zelda community for quite a bit now. And I really need to talk about it because the Nintendo Switch 2 means a new generation of consoles and also a new generation of games. For every single franchise, all of a sudden, if you didn't like what they did the last generation or the last couple generations, you can have hope. You can believe in something more, and you can believe that there is a chance, even if it may be minute, even if it may be the smallest chance in the world, there is a sliver of hope that what you want from a series will come to fruition. And with Zelda, I am just so unsure of what the future holds and what they're going to do with this series, especially considering they have released a new Zelda game every single year, whether it be some sort of spin-off, remake, or just brand new game. They've released almost a brand new one every year since the Nintendo Switch has launched. And even before that, there was a pretty long period in which every year there was a Zelda game, and that has been their goal, to get us hyped about Zelda at least once a year about something. And this year you could say, well, that game is probably Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, but we're not even guaranteed to know if that game comes out this year. It is slated for winter, and I would not be surprised if it comes out in January or February, and that is yet another continuation of the Breath of the Wild era. And as much as I love that era, it's my favorite. I enjoy those games so much, and I loved Age of Calamity and cannot wait to get my hands on a much better version of Age of Imprisonment here. I am just still a little bit worried about what the future holds because I do agree things need to change, and I don't know how much they are going to change. One of the bright spots for this big argument is Echoes of Wisdom from last year. That game was pretty good in most respects to a lot of people, and all of the people who have been saying that this Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom era is bad for Zelda, it's not even Zelda, it changes the formula, it's not what they're looking for, those people really enjoyed Echoes of Wisdom because it kind of brought you back to that initial formula, what the Zelda series has always been: puzzles first, a little bit more linearity, and a big storyline. Now, they also included a lot of the open world type elements into this game from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, especially with the Echo mechanic, being able to get anything at any time, anywhere, just summoning it in the middle of the freaking map. You can get a water block and pretty much abuse it and get anywhere you want at any time, and it can be very frustrating for people to just say, okay, I could walk around and fight this guy and intricately solve a puzzle to get to the next area, and when I get there, then I have to do this and that, or I could just use 5 water blocks, float up to the top of the trees, and just walk over it. Now yes, I 1000% agree Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are amazing, and the sales numbers represent that. People love these games more than the other games in the series. Breath of the Wild and Tears have the benefit of being on the most successful console of all time. Now with the Switch 2, we're not so certain what this is going to look like. It is seemingly a huge success thus far, but we're going to have to wait and see what those numbers truly look like, and by the time a new 3D Zelda comes out, I'm sure we'll be probably almost a fourth of the way through, or at least midway through this console's lifespan, and by then, there will be a massive install base, and then we can really see what those numbers are going to look like for Zelda compared to how all the other games have panned out before it, especially comparing it backwards to Breath of the Wild and Tears. But I think this game is going to be different because Aounuma listens to us, okay? This Zelda team does not just do whatever they want. They do whatever they want, and that usually ends up being a good job, but they also take into account critiques. And as much as I love Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, it is undeniable that there is either a large group of people or a very vocal minority of people who do not like the direction of this series and want it to change in one way or another. Now, a lot of these people I really do think would be fine with the gameplay staying in a similar level as Breath and Tears, but if they were somehow able to incorporate a more linear storytelling method and just make the story stronger overall and add a little less freedom to the experience, I think that would make a lot of people happy. Skyward Sword was the last linear 3D Zelda game that we will probably get in a very long time. Breath of the Wild only exists because Aounuma was able to take criticism. The team was able to learn from their mistakes and knew they had gone too far in one direction and knew the series needed a shakeup. And now here we are in 2025, and I do not believe we will see another Zelda game until at least 2027 in terms of when we're going to get it in our hands at the earliest. And by then, it will have been a decade since Breath of the Wild released. And by then, we can really look back at Skyward Sword and say, wow, that game changed everything, because I really do think, even though Skyward Sword was the reason we got Breath and Tears, I think the response to Breath and Tears, the critique that people have been giving Nintendo and receiving online, I really think that the next game is going to take that to heart and change in some facet. At the same time, I think they're going to evolve the series with what we have in Breath and Tears. From Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom, it was a direct sequel. They were able to evolve a lot of those concepts into a much, much better experience for the player. If you think of all of the runes from Breath of the Wild, magnesis, the stasis, the bombs, those things are all included in Tears of the Kingdom in a much, much better way. Rather than having magnesis, where you can carry any magnetic object, you have Ultra Hand, where you can pick up anything and use it however you like and stick it together and make cool creations to do whatever you want in the world. Instead of stasis, you have rewind, in which you can take an object and put it back to where it was, and that is such a cool and groundbreaking innovation on something that was really, really cool before, but is even better now. Then instead of bombs being a rune, you can attach them to any of your weapons, shields, arrows. It's a whole part of this fuse mechanic. You can take anything and put it into your weapons, and that was a response to weapon durability critiques back in Breath of the Wild. And sure, it didn't quite fix it, because in my opinion, I didn't really care how much weapons did break in Breath of the Wild. I felt like in Tears they broke even more so, because you were supposed to fuse things together, and yet fusing them together only really resulted in the similar type of weapon durability from Breath of the Wild, except now my weapons look weirder and they're all broken and they're all not cool, and I just didn't think aesthetically it was a better option. But it was still addressing those critiques. It was still something different that they had creatively thought up to enhance the gameplay experience, and something that I really do believe they saw people complain about and tried to fix it. And the other rune that I forgot to mention was Cryonis, in which you can take any body of water and able to elevate it with an ice pillar. And this is so much better in Tears of the Kingdom as well, because all you need now is any sort of ice object, an ice flower or something like that, and you can just throw it. You can throw it into the water and boom, an ice platform. Even simple things like the dungeons themselves. People had a lot of problems with the Divine Beasts in Breath of the Wild. I personally adored them, and I really appreciated every single thing about them. But I do understand from past Zelda fans who had come into this game with, honestly, appreciated biases of what the series past has been in terms of dungeons. They really, really had a high expectation for what these things should be, and they just weren't quite met compared to some of the labyrinths that something like Skyward Sword was able to provide. I mean, that game had intricate labyrinths that I got lost in multiple times and really had a hard time figuring out. And that type of puzzly mechanic is such a core identity part of this series. And for Zelda to really reinvent itself with Breath and Tears, I can see how people were upset about this new direction. And so in Tears, they really tried to address the dungeon critiques by adding in a more visual identity rather than having all of the Divine Beasts look the same. They have dungeons that really match the world that they're in, the part of the environment, the geographical spot that they're in on that map. And then they were able to add a little bit more of the linear puzzle solving methods. So all of this to say, they are listening and they are genuinely trying to make the experience better. And for a lot of people, I think Breath of the Wild is better to Tears of the Kingdom in their minds. And I don't know if that has to do with just nostalgia or if they truly do think that Breath is better than Tears. But if you really break everything down, I find it almost inexcusable to say that Breath of the Wild is inherently a better game than Tears of the Kingdom. If you want to say, okay, I don't like what Tears of the Kingdom does, I prefer what Breath of the Wild does over Tears, then I understand that. And if you just want to say objectively speaking, I don't think it's better, but subjectively, in my opinion, I prefer Breath of the Wild. I totally understand that as well. But to say Tears of the Kingdom is just inherently and objectively worse is to absolutely slap the developers in the face who tried to address every single critique that people had about Breath of the Wild and enhanced every good part of that game and just made it better in almost every way. Now, the biggest reason a lot of people have been complaining and saying that they really don't think that Zelda is ever going to change from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom back to what it was, or at least evolve into a new way that kind of satisfies both sides of the argument here, is because of what Aounuma said a couple years ago in an interview to IGN. Here are the two quotes that really rubbed people the wrong way, those fans who enjoyed the older Zelda. This was just seen as a slap in the face to those people who enjoyed the series past and wanted it to be more like that moving forward, and here is what he said. He goes, "Well, I do think we as people have a tendency to want the thing that we don't currently have, and there's a little bit of a grass is greener mentality." Okay, I mean, I can see how he would subtly jab at these people who maybe have been hating for no reason, if he in fact thinks that there is no reason for that, and it's just not as outspoken as you might expect for someone to be complaining about. But this next quote here is a little bit more disparaging for people who want those older Zelda games back. He says, "It's interesting when I hear people say they prefer the old entries because I'm wondering, why do you want to go back to a type of game where you're more limited or more restricted in the types of things or ways you can play? But I do understand that desire that we have for nostalgia, and so I can also understand it from that perspective." Yikes. If you are a huge fan of the old Zelda, if you want them to incorporate those elements into the new games, that is a big slap in the face to you. That is such a crazy thing for him to say, and I will even admit it's very uncomfortable to hear as a fan of Zelda and Nintendo. I really don't like the mindset of, okay, well, if you don't like it, it must be because you're nostalgia blinded and you just want what you can never have, which is something perfect. That is just not the mindset I think they should be taking, and even though it sounds really bad, I don't think that is the exact approach they are actually taking. I don't think they're coming into the office every day and saying, dude, they're crazy. People who want old Zelda back are ridiculous, and we're never going to listen to them, and we're never going to take any sort of critique whatsoever. I think they've proven in the past, I think they've proven with Tears of the Kingdom itself, that they will listen, that they will implement other things, and that they know they're not perfect. And that's not what they're trying to say they are, but I think maybe Aounuma is a little bit frustrated because Zelda was kind of on a decline up until Skyward Sword. That game only sold 3.67 million copies on a Wii console that had over 100 million people, and yet over 4 million in sales could not be reached for a Zelda game, the biggest franchise Nintendo has outside of Mario. That's crazy to me, and I really think that those sales numbers is what pushed Aounuma to think, you know what, this is getting old. We need to change things or die in stagnation. And I think they did an amazing job pivoting from Skyward Sword to Breath of the Wild, keeping that core identity intact while also pushing forward into a new type of game, a new era for Zelda. Tears of the Kingdom did even better in my opinion. There are things that are worse about Tears, like the storyline. I don't like that. I don't like how it also kind of repeated the same beats as Breath of the Wild. You go to 4 regions, you do 4 things, you get 4 very important people with you, and then boom, you go and you fight Ganon. I don't like that, but moving forward, I truly do not think that these quotes mean they're not going to change things and that it's just going to be rinse and repeat. And the best part, the thing I can really hang my hat on, and if you are a big fan of Zelda, this is what you can hang your hat on too. They will always put gameplay first, okay? Because the story is going to be second in almost any Zelda game ever. Any Nintendo game, story will almost always be second. Gameplay will come first. And Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom have some of the most fun and innovative gameplay of all time in any game ever. I think they are going to really change up what that series did, what those games did, and change it and take the best parts of it and implement it into a new type of game. And I think it's going to be a completely different area, different environment, different storylines, different characters, and different types of ways to interact with the world around you. Whatever Tears of the Kingdom was able to improve upon on Breath of the Wild, I want you to think of all those mechanics that they were able to push out of the Nintendo Switch's potato hardware and think about what they can do from the ground up for the Nintendo Switch 2. Because I guarantee you, in 2023, when they finished developing Tears of the Kingdom and they said, we're not doing any DLC, a big part of that was because they knew they had to begin work on the next Zelda for the next console. In terms of what that 3D Zelda game looks like, I think it will be an evolution of the series again. I think it will be completely different from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, taking the best elements of that and some of the best elements from the past, the Zelda series, the Zelda games in the past, and moving it into one new game that will honestly probably work to satisfy everyone and make everyone happy. Because to be honest, I think there is a way to make freedom and exploration and gameplay first, to make Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom look stupid in comparison, and yet also be able to satisfy those people who love the story of the older games, who love the intricate puzzles and the linear storylines of those games. I think you can somehow, someway combine it into one package. I think that that's what they're trying to do, and I think that's what we're going to see next. And yes, it does seem very disparaging. It does seem like they don't care. And I don't think that's the case. I think if you look at the history, if you look at Aounuma and that team, the Zelda team specifically, they have proven over and over and over again, even as recent as 2023, that they do listen to feedback, that they are working to enhance the experience and make things better. And they know if they need to pivot, if they need to change, that change will come. Now, the sales numbers for Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, over 50 million sales combined for both those games, even with Tears being the first $70 Nintendo game ever. Both those games sold amazingly well, and I can imagine Aounuma finds it to be a slap in the face when people say, you should go back to the old ways, we all liked it better this way, because in his perspective, the reason it didn't sell well is because y'all were not wanting that old way anymore. And to a certain extent, the sales numbers do actually tell a big story. It says that Tears and Breath of the Wild are how this franchise needs to move forward. This is the direction that they have to take in terms of expanding their IP. And Zelda getting a new movie has a lot to do with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom's success. Do you think if Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild had only sold about 5 million copies each, that they would be making a Zelda movie? I really don't think so. I think because it exploded the way it did on the Switch, we are now reaping the benefits of this franchise getting even more exposure. But now to the most interesting part of this whole conversation. If I really do think they're listening, if I really do think that a new game will be coming in the next 2 to 3 years, and we're going to see it, and it's going to look amazing, it's going to be this big mix of everything every Zelda fan could ever want, this dream game that somehow figures it all out, what are they going to do in the meantime? Because we have a couple years till then, right? It's 2025. It's been 2 years since Tears of the Kingdom released, and I guarantee you they've been working on it since then. 2023 was probably exactly when they started development on that next game from the ground up for the Switch 2. I truly don't know what they could do next, because of course they have the Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD remakes that people have been clamoring for years. That would be such an easy port over to the Switch 2. They could do that. They could remake Ocarina of Time. They could remake Majora's Mask, but they kind of already did that with the 3DS. They made 3D versions of those games, and I don't know if they're going to want to do it again, just because they've run out of 3D games to remake and repackage to us at this point. All of them have been remade. Now, I would love to see an Ocarina of Time remake or a Majora's Mask remake, or both in one crazy package up to today's graphical standards and just making it even better for us to play and be more accessible to enjoy this series even more. But at the same time, I just don't think that they're going to want to do that when about 10 years ago they did the same thing for the 3DS, and yet I can still see the argument of people saying it's different now, it's a home console, it is much, much better graphics, and I could see them wanting to do that. But at the exact same time, again and again, back and forth here, I do think that the core Zelda team would want to do that, and I think the core Zelda team is working on the next game. Now, the 2D games are a lot more interesting. They could absolutely do another Link's Awakening type remake, and that game sold incredibly well on the Switch. Echoes of Wisdom was a brand new 2D game, and they used the exact same engine. I don't think that they would want to use the same engine for the Switch 2. I think they would want to make an entirely new 2D game from the ground up with a different engine, and at the same time, maybe some of the older games will use that engine as the remake type engine, but it really does depend on what the game is going for, what that style is, because there are a lot of 2D Zelda games that have not been remade that could be brought over to the Switch 2. But at the same time, I do think they really enjoy giving us a big 3D experience as well. The 2D games are amazing, but they don't sell as well in general, and so Nintendo really wants to keep the Zelda hype up with their 3D games, and just us knowing that a new game is coming soon is important to them, so they want us to be satisfied in what they have in the meantime. If I had to guess, there would be something like a Wind Waker, Twilight Princess HD, something similar to that remake next year. Then in 2027 is when we will probably get our first glimpse of the new Zelda game, and then it will probably release either in that holiday or in early 2028. Or maybe they really surprise us and say, you know what? We can crank this new game out in about 3 years and give us 2026, a brand new Zelda game. I really doubt that, but it's possible, right? Maybe they decided they wanted to just go for a shorter development time. But no, I am not at all hanging my hat on that, nor should you. Please do not hold out hope for that, because that is just very unrealistic in how this Zelda team has really been operating up till this point. But until then, I think we'll see some remakes, I think we'll see some remasters, maybe even some simple ports like the Wind Waker, Twilight Princess HD stuff, and then maybe a new 2D game, and then maybe a new 3D game, because obviously those are always in development and are some of the biggest sellers for Nintendo up to this point. So, what do you think the future of Zelda looks like? Where is it heading? What is going on with the new team? And is this game going to be this middle ground that I'm talking about here? Or do you think it's just going to go in the complete opposite direction from what all of those older Zelda fans really are looking for? Let me know all that and more down in the comments section below. Make sure you like and subscribe today's video if you enjoyed. Click that notification bell to make sure you know exactly when all of my videos release. Click on the left side of the screen if you want to see my reviews of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 editions, and click on the right side of your screen if you want to watch every single Zelda video I have ever made. Thank you so much for making it to the very end of the video. You are amazing. Make sure you have yourself a phenomenal day. This has been Ray's Nintendo Talk. I have been Ray, and I will see you all in the next video.